Hey guys, this is Ryder Sigety and my dad,
Mike.
So this race was the Dragons Back National Enduro in Arrington, Virginia, and I had a great time. What did you think of it?
I had a good time too. I enjoy riding with you and letting you win.
So there was 963 entries in this race, and it was mostly a crowd of adults. For example, there was only 20 kids in my class, and my class was really the only kids class. So there really wasn't a lot of kids at all.
How many people are normally in a class?
Normally upwards of 40. For example, your class, my dad's class, had 40 people.
So explain how the sections work.
So there's 6 sections, and each section is around 7 miles. Not at all races, but at this race, they all were around 7 miles. And it's like a timed trial of trail. So there's a starting point and an ending point of each section, which you'll see later in the video. You'll see the end point. You already saw the starting point. And you just race from the start to the end, and then you get a break in between each of the 7.
So back in the day, you needed a computer on your handlebar, you had to follow a special program, you had to change, they had special speed averages you had to change, and when they did it that way, not as many people would show up, probably less than half. But now that they made it really simple, you don't need any computers, you just show up to the start of your section, and there's a person holding a number and tells you when your row is supposed to go, and you just race through. So how many rows were there?
So at this race there was 161 rows, and each row has around 5 people. So each row takes off a minute after the next, and you always take off behind the people that you took off last time. So we were on row 14, so every section we took off a minute behind row 13, which means that you're always passing the same people or getting passed by the same people each section. So the people that you were passing kind of realized who you are, and they started to let you go.
So if the race starts at 9 and you're row 14, what time does the race start for you?
Since we were row 14, it started at 9:14, but for some people that are like row 160, it'll start much later.
Like how much later?
Like 2.5 hours around.
So how does the weather play a role in an enduro when the rows are spaced 2 hours or 3 starting position 2-3 hours apart and there's 800 or 900 people?
So we were early, so it didn't affect us much what the weather was. But as you get later in the rows, if it's a muddy race, the ruts get worse and worse, and the people at the beginning of the race have a much better track than the people at the end. This race, it wasn't muddy, so the track did get a little worse, but it didn't get really much worse at all.
So is there any disadvantage to being up front?
Yeah, sometimes when you're up front, the trail isn't burnt in enough, and there's a lot of leaves on it, so you can't really tell where you're going. At this race, it was a good thing to be early, because there was a threat of rain in the forecast, and if we would have gotten rain and the ruts would have gotten worse as the day went on, it was good to be on row 14 because the ruts wouldn't have been bad yet.
But instead of raining a lot, it just rained a little bit on Saturday and kept a lot of the dust down and worked out really well.
Yeah, the trails were like perfect.
So did you feel like the first section was ridden a lot before you got to it?
Yeah, so the first section, there was a hare scramble out there. There was a hare scramble there 2 weeks before, so it was kind of beat up, but not too bad.
Easy to follow, that's for sure.
Yeah. So we're doing this one a little different, actually a lot different than we do our other videos. So I only recorded 5 out of the 6 sections of it. For some reason section 5 didn't record. But at the start of each section, we put like 30 seconds, 45 seconds of music, and then we'll go right back to talking.
And we chose to use some old rock music, considering the audience at National Enduros is a little bit on the older side compared to the audience at, let's say, the Hair Scrambles.
Yeah.
So we'd be interested in your comments on how we edited the video. If you thought it was too long, just right, if you like the music or not. And if you want to see some other videos that are pretty good, check out some of the GNCC videos that are on Ryder's channel. There are definitely more battling going on, and we'll talk about the difference between the GNCC. Oh, they got a little lost here. We'll talk a little bit. That's one of the things that happens when you're on early min, right? You miss turns easily. But we'll, the GNCCs have a little more battling going on, and this is a little more of just riding the course and an occasional rider passing you or you passing the rider.
Really, we'd appreciate it if you subscribed and liked the video, because I think this is hour 10, if not more, plus working on the video. So
yeah, each video is like almost 10 hours, and right now our computer is being repaired, so we're using like a lower level computer that doesn't edit well, and we don't have all our tools and stuff with us. But if you like and subscribe, it's really easy to do, and it helps us out a little bit. So up here is the end of the section, and tell us how that works.
So it's gonna time me, like it'll end my time for the section. So at the beginning of the section, it started, and now it ends.
Oh yeah, here's my old friend Grant.
So on my handlebars, you'll see a white piece of paper. That's called a route sheet, and it kind of helps you get from one place to another. It tells you how many miles away each section is, because you don't want to be late to the next section when your group is going in.
It also tells you how much rest time you have in between each section, and what time you have to, like you said, show up at the beginning of the next section. So if you have to do repairs or get water or get gas or do anything to your bike, you need to know, because you do have to show up at the start of each section at your exact time that they tell you to be there. So why don't you tell a little bit about what your score was and how you calculated it?
So on live laps, it shows all of my scores, but there's a red X, or the letters are red for my last two sections and times, because since I'm a sea rider, I didn't have to do them. So what we did was we added up all my times, and then I had 1 hour, 19 minutes, and 6 seconds. And
that's to complete the 6 sections, right? Not 1 hour, 19 minutes on the bike. You're on the bike all day, but 1 hour, 19 minutes, and 6 seconds of race time.
Yeah, and then we looked in the overall, and 1 hour, 19 minutes, and 7 seconds was Cameron Harris, and he got 77th overall.
What class did he race?
He raced Open A. So technically, if I took his spot, I would be 77th overall.
And how did you do in the C class and B class?
So I got the C high point, and I also got the B high point, which we figured out the same way, just we only calculated 5 sections, since B only has to do 5. And that's if you don't count the women's elite class, because they're more of an A rider class. Like, for example, the winner got paid $1,250 this weekend for a win.
Yamaha pays $1,250 for the women's elite class, right? But for some reason, the women's elite class only do 5 sections, which I don't understand why they don't do all 6. But they are incredibly fast. Some of the women's elite class, like they're throwing down top 30, top 40 overall times, beating 99% of everyone or 98% of everyone there. They're really amazing.
Yeah. So this race was mostly single track, but it also had some wide open grass fields on rolling hills, and sometimes you get over the top of the rolling hills and you couldn't tell what was on the other side, like if there was a turn right over the top or you kept going straight, if there's a rain rut. So you kind of had to slow down, but I bet the pros didn't slow down at all. They probably just jumped off the top of it.
And what gear were you in going through some of those fields?
I was going as fast as my bike would go with the, yeah.
So how come we don't have a lot of fields in your video?
So some of the fields were really dusty, and a lot of the section that had the most fields, the camera was pointed up into my face because of a crash I had.
Oh, I thought we took them out because the way you were standing in those fields was facing the camera towards the handlebars.
Yeah, that too.
So tell us about the bike that you ride.
So I'm riding the YZ85 with the big bore kit, the 2022, and it has 16-inch back rear wheel and a 19-inch front wheel. But in my class, you can have up to a 150, and a KTM 150 is a huge bike.
Actually, I think the max size is 200 cc's, but yeah, you can definitely be riding a full bike. So how big and tall are you?
I'm not very tall. I'm 14, AMA 13, so that's just the age you are on January 1st. And I am 5 foot.
How much do you weigh?
Like 100 pounds.
And what kind of rider goes to National Enduros compared to riders who go to local Enduros?
So people that go to the National Enduros, mostly experienced riders, because a lot of people aren't gonna travel all over the country to race the circuit if they're not really into dirt biking. So it's definitely a lot more competitive at these national races that we go to. So at the beginning and end of each section, you'll see people writing down something on a piece of paper, like a pad, and they're writing the time and your number. So in case the computer stopped working, they always have a backup, so that they know what time you went in and what time you left the section.
And do you remember how the top 3 pros finished today? No. Okay, so Ben Kelly got first, Graham Baylor got second, and Ryder Lafferty got third. And do you know what place Stu Baylor got?
I don't know.
He got 5th. And what happened to Stu 5 weeks ago?
5 weeks ago, Stu out of the GNCC broke his neck.
And his wrist.
Yeah, and his wrist.
So it's probably not completely healed in 5 weeks, and he got 5th overall today.
Yeah, that's true.
So if I'm doing my calculations right, Ryder Lafferty actually just moved into the points lead for the series. So he got a 2nd at the last race and a 3rd at this race. So congratulations to him. So how do you know what your scores are during the day? Like how do you know if you're beating your competition or if they're beating you?
So in between sections, if you have service and if you have a phone with you, which both of them are kind of rare, you can go onto Live Labs, which is where they post the online scores and look at your live results. But sometimes you might be done with the section, but someone in your class might not be because they might be on a later row than you.
And what's the problem with that if they're on a later row?
If they're on a later row, then they'll start after you, and if you had just finished the section, they might not even have started it.
So you don't even know how you're doing until sometime later in the day.
Yeah.
So what happened to you at this race last year?
Last year, at the end of section 2, like a mile, not even from the end, I ran out of gas. And it's kind of funny going through the same section this year, knowing it was the same section. I ran out of gas last year, and I didn't recognize any other part of the trail but that part, so it seemed like it was one of the only parts that they ran last year and this year.
Yeah, they ran a lot of the same parts from last year, and what's really also weird about the course is you can kind of see there's some leaves here, but you really can't tell that there's loose rocks on the leaves or anything. It always looks so nice in video, but there was definitely baseball-sized rocks here and there under those leaves that you couldn't see at times, but it's still an awesome event. So before the race started, did you know who your competition was going to be?
I had a pretty good idea. Racing all over the East Coast, we kind of know most of the fast kids and if someone fast is going to be there because you can see who's registered. And someone from my local series, actually, Austin Zakanikas, he was there, and I knew it was going to come down, or we knew it was going to come down between him and I, and it did. We were tied up until about the last section where he made a big mistake. It's an honor to beat him because I know he's really fast. Here's section 2. I want to thank the Neff family because they really helped out this race. They were our pit crew, so they held stuff for us like goggles, gloves, wheels, gas, and it's really important to have a pit crew at these races because when you have the opportunity to change stuff in between each section, it's really good when you have the tools and the resources that you can change things.
So what was different about the pit situation at this race compared to some of the other races we do?
So normally after each section, or after every other section, let's say, there's a gas and it's usually in a different spot. But this race, after section 2, you were able to go to the gas after every section and it was in the same spot.
So what does that mean you were able to go to the gas? Explain that.
So the gas is where your pit crew parks. So it's where they set up and it's where they put all their stuff.
So I thought like most races have like 1, maybe 2 gas stops when there's a 6-section race. And here, how many times would you say we could see the pit crews?
Yeah, we saw the pit crews 4 times out of 6 sections.
Yeah, that makes a nice race when they have that. What about the parking at this race? What usually happens like when you go to the really popular races where there's thousands of people racing?
Usually you don't get a good parking spot if you're there late.
And what's not a good parking spot? What does that mean?
Yeah, you'll be like in the mud or on an off-camber slope. When you're trying to sleep in a motorhome, it's not the best to be off-camber, or you might even get stuck sometimes. But this race, they have a huge horse racing track, and there's a huge grass field in the middle, and everybody can park on it, and there's great parking.
So what's the difference between the etiquette at an enduro and the etiquette at a hare scramble when you're racing? And what's the proper protocol when you catch people or people get caught?
At an enduro, the proper protocol is to let people go right away. They even say it in the riders' meetings. And although at a hare scramble, they also say it at the riders' meeting. People don't know if they're in your class or if they're not in your class. And sometimes, a lot of the time, they're hesitant to let you go, which I understand. But it seems like people let you go a lot easier in the National Enduros.
Yeah, well, at the National Enduros, if it's not one of the 5 or 4 or 6 people you started with, and somebody catches you, they started a minute behind you. So there's no doubt that that person's faster than you, right?
Yeah.
Do people move over all the time or most of the time?
Most of the time. Sometimes they don't move over, but it's always nice when they do, and I always try to say thank you, but sometimes I forget.
So we didn't record any of the river crossings in the transfer section. Well, why don't we first explain what is a transfer section?
So in between each section or time trial, there's a trail to get to the start of the next section. And the most technical part of the race was the transfer section in between the 2 sections.
In between the sections where they time?
Yeah.
And what was technical about it?
There was like rocky hills and roots and ruts and river crossings. Yeah, it was hard. Right here, there was a split and you could choose to go up the hill or go around. I was like, you know, since they have a way around, it's probably much longer. I'll go up the hill just like a lot of the other people might be doing to save time. And I didn't get stuck at all, and I ended up getting past going up the hill. It was so much faster to go around it.
That's really weird, because whenever we make trails, we always make the harder line faster.
Yeah, and it's usually how it works in races too, but it wasn't like that there.
Well, here's one of those fast fields. You kind of got to change your body position to attack them safely. Doesn't make the greatest video.
Yeah. So, right around here is where I ran out of gas, I'm pretty sure, one year. Actually, no, it's not. Sorry.
Oh, you almost missed that turn.
Yeah. This actually is where I ran out of gas last year. And watch how close I am to the finish.
Yeah, it was like a minute, right? But I think it's a little farther down.
Yeah, it was right around here. I guess. So after all, if you made it this far, I did win the race, and I actually took the points lead for the series, so we'll see how that goes. That's good. Last year there was river crossings, and in the transfer section this year, that were over the engine case, so thankfully since it didn't rain, like this river right here would probably be a lot taller, just like all the other ones. I'm looking forward to the next race, Missouri. This was my first race that I ever did all 6 sections, and at Missouri, in the 6th section, the last one, there's a really cool river that you go down and people take photos, and there's a bunch of ledges and drops, so hopefully I can make it through all 6 at Missouri, and I can get a really cool picture up there. So coming up right over here, I had a crash. It wasn't bad. I mean, I kind of went over the handlebars, but I didn't really get hurt at all right here. And it kind of knocked the camera up into an unpleasant view, so I didn't get any more of the section. For some reason, when I was younger, I used to race at my local series. I'd race my 65 for an hour, and then I'd race my 85 for an hour and a half. And both of them would usually run long, so I'd run around 3 hours a race, even more. And I'd be tired after this, but for some reason, all the races I do now seem more tiring than all the ones I did back then. And I always do less racing now than I did then, so who knows, it's a little weird. And it's also really weird, again, racing with all these adults. I'm used to racing with kids, and I pass the kids and nothing happens. I pass the adults and it feels like they're cheering me on. Like half the time I'll hear them like yell for me. Well, this was definitely a longer video than most of our other ones. So write down below if you thought it was too long, or if you think most of them should be this long. So if you want, you can check out me on Instagram at Ryder Sigety, and my dad on Facebook, because I don't really use Facebook as much, at Mike Sigety. And I know I said this already, but please like and subscribe to the video. It really helps us out, and I hope you guys liked it. See ya!